Hello EDI developers. In this video I'm going to show you how to create an SEF file from scratch. But first let me explain what a SEF file is. A SEF file, or Standard Exchange Format file, is an implementation guideline in a standard machine readable format. So for example, here is a typical EDI implementation guideline. This EDI guideline is for an X12 846 transaction set. It will have an overview of all the segments it uses and the detailed information of those segments. Now let me show you how an SEF file looks like. I'm going to open it up with a text editor. As you can see, this format is not easily readable, but it is machine readable, meaning it can easily be parsed by a computer program. And the purpose for it to be machine readable is so that the information in an EDI implementation guideline can be loaded into a computer program and be used to process its corresponding EDI file, like to parse and translate it, or validate it, or to construct one like it. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to take information from a user-readable EDI implementation guideline and move it over to a machine-readable SEF file using the SEF Manager. Okay, so let's start. This SEF file is for the 850, so I'm going to close it. This implementation guideline is for the 846, so this is what we are going to create. Let's start by opening up the SEF Manager. I'm going to hit the cancel button because we're going to create a SEF file from scratch. Go to File, click on New, and because the 846 is an ASCII X12 standard, this is what we're going to select. In the transaction set ID, type in 846. In the description, just copy and paste the title from the implementation guideline, and in the functional group type in IB. Then hit OK. So I moved the SEF Manager next to the EDI guideline so that it doesn't cover it. So let us see what segments got automatically created. We see the GE, the GS, the GE, the GS, the IEA and the ISA, the IEA and the ISA, the ST and the SE. So the ST and the SE. So basically the control segments got automatically created. And what we have to do next is to create these segments between the ST and the SE that were not automatically created by the SEF Manager. Okay, so let's start creating those segments under the data segment directory, starting with the BIA segment. So let's scroll down to its detail. Here it is. Okay, so in the SEF Manager, right-click on the data segment directory and select Add Data Segment. In the segment ID, type in BIA. In the description, you can just copy and paste. Next, we add the first data element. So select Add Element. The element ID is 353. The description is transaction set purpose code. The data type is ID. The maximum length and minimum length is 2. So 2. The requirement is mandatory, M. And it's used once and it's repeated once. So that information is not here. So let's just keep the default and we'll just click on OK. OK to add, say yes. And we do the same thing for the second data element. So add element. Element ID is 755. Report type code is the description. It's data type ID. Minimum length is 2. Maximum length is 2. Requirement is mandatory. And hit OK. Let's do the same thing for the third data element. This time it's alphanumeric. The minimum length is 1. The maximum length is 30. It's mandatory as well. Then hit OK. The fourth data element, the element ID is 373. And because 373 was already used by another segment, so when we typed it in, all the information just came in right here. So that probably the only thing that we need to change is that this is mandatory in here. So we're going to select mandatory and hit OK. And element 5, or element position 5, the element ID is 337. Again, this element was already created, and this time is optional here. So we'll just leave that option, and then just hit OK. And that's it for this segment. So what we have to do is just click on OK. And here's the BIA segment. Now when you create this BIA segment, in the data element directory, the elements that got created, the elements that were used to create the segment also got created under this data element directory. So for example, 353 is here, 755 is here, 127 is here, and so on. It's not in order right now, but if you want to sort it, just right-click on the directory and click on Sort. And now the data elements ID are sorted. Okay, so that's how you go about creating the segment. So let's create another one. But first, I'm going to hit the Save button. And this, give the name of the SEF file. And this is an 846 version 4010. And I'm going to click on Save. And that's it. So let's move on to the next segment. Okay, so the next segment is the DTM segment. Let me collapse this element directory. Right-click on the data segment directory, add data segment. Segment ID is DTM. Description, datetime reference. Then I'm going to add an element. The first data element is 374. Description, datetime qualifier, type ID, minimum length is 3, maximum length is 3, the requirement is mandatory, hit OK, add yes. The next data element is 373, and I think we already have it, so there it is. Requirement is mandatory, hit OK. The third data element is 337. We already have this as well. It's optional, so hit OK. And the fourth data element is 623. So add element 623. This is the time code. Data type is ID. Minimum and maximum length is 2. And it's optional. So note that at this point we're just creating the segment and we're just ignoring the other information at this time, like what value the data element should hold. Okay, so I'm going to click on OK and then save it. So now here's the DTM segment. If we expand this here, we can also see the data elements for this segment as well. Let me pause this video while I continue to do the other data segments. And when I'm done, I'll come back on and show you the next step. Okay, I've now completed creating all the other data segments. The next step now is to go to the transaction set directory and lay out the segments that we created according to the specifications for this transaction set. So let's go over to the overview of the implementation guideline to see how the data segments are laid out. So here in our SEF file, we have the segments ST and SE. And what we have to do is we have to insert the other segments that are between ST and SE in the guideline. So the next segment after the ST segment is the BIA segment. So to insert that in our SEF file, right-click on the ST segment, then select Insert Segment Reference After. In the segment ID field, type in BIA. The requirement is mandatory. The maximum use is 1. And let's hit OK. Let's do the same for the DTM segment. So DTM is after BIA. So right-click on the BIA segment. Select Insert Segment Reference After. Type in DTM. It's optional. Maximum use is 10 times. Then hit OK. Next is the N1 segment, but this N1 segment is in a loop ID N1. So right-click on the DTM segment that we just created and select Insert Loop. And the segment ID is N1. And the loop ID is N1. The loop is repeated 5 times. And let's click OK. So in here we see that a loop got created, loop ID N1. And in it there's an N1 segment. Now we just have to change this from optional. So change segment reference. The requirement is mandatory. So change that optional to mandatory. And then click OK. The next segment is the LIN segment, but it's in its own loop as well. So in the SEF file, right-click on the loop N1 node and insert loop. Type in LIN. Loop ID is LIN. It's repeated 10,000 times. Then hit OK. And inside the LIN loop is also the DTM segment. So right-click on the LIN segment, insert segment after, then type in DTM. It's optional. Maximum use is 10 times. Next segment is SDQ. So right-click on DTM, insert segment after, enter SDQ. It's mandatory. Maximum use is 500 times. Then hit OK. So all these 3 segments that we just created are under the LIN loop. And now the last segment that we're going to insert is the CTT segment. And that's after the LIN loop. So right-click on the LIN loop and insert segment reference after. Type CTT. It's optional, maximum use is 1. Then hit OK. Okay, now that we've entered all the data segments, we have to section them by heading, detail, and summary. So the segments from ST to N1 belongs to the heading section. The segments from LIN to SDQ is the detail, and the summary is the CTT and SE. So these sections are actually represented as area in the SEF file. So area 1 is the heading section, and area 2 will be the detail, and area 3 will be the summary. So right now, all the data segments that we've created are in area 1. So as you can see, area 1, which is the first number here in this line. Or you can look here in the property box. So all these are area 1. So to make the LIN segment to be the start of area 2, which is the detail, just select the LIN segment, right click, and select Start Area. So now we see that starting from the LIN segment, the area has started as area 2. This was area 1, now it's area 2. And the CTT segment is area 3, so let's right click on it and say Start Area. And now this will from CTT segment and onwards will now have area 3, which is the summary. Okay, so this looks good. Let me save this ZEF file. Okay, the next thing we want to do, which is not really that important, is the position number. So ST has position number 10, BIA 20, and DTM is 50. And we have here that the DTM is position 30. So we can change that by right-clicking on it, change segment reference, and then in here in the position field, just type in 50. Apply, OK, and that's how you change the position number. And let's do the same thing for the N1 segment. So right-click, position number 80. LIN segment, change that segment reference, 10. DTM segment, 100. You're probably wondering why these segments are not in sequence or they don't increment evenly. It's because between the LIN and the DTM segment, there are probably other segments in the transaction set that are not being used in this guideline. So that's why there's a skip, and it goes from 10 to 100. So the SDQ is 220. Like I said, this position number is not that important, but just in case someone referenced the segment by the position number, then it gets to be important. And the CTT segment is position 10 in area 3. So 10, and the SE segment is 20. And there we have it. So now we have to go back again to the details of these segments so that we can enter in the specifications here in the transaction set directory. So here's the ST segment. Let me collapse this, expand the ST segment, and in here the ST01 is the only allowed value here. So what we do is right click, add code, and type in 846. And now this says in the SEF file that element ID 143 of the ST segment here can only have the value 846. Let's go to the BIA segment, expand it. The first data element The valid codes are 00 and 25. So right click on this, add codes, type in 00, comma, 25. Don't put any spaces between the 0, and the commas and the 25. So it's just 00, comma 25. Hit OK. And here it is, 00, 25. For data element 2, it's DD. Add code DD. And there we have it. 3, 4, and 5, we don't have to do anything with them. Let's go to the DTM segment. First data element, the qualifier allowed is 166. Two and 3, you don't have to do anything with them. Data element 4, the code is GM. The N1 segment, first data element, add code ZZ, 2, 3, change that to 92, hit OK, and we're done with N1. The LIN segment, data element 2, add codes DP, comma SK, DP SK. Now for this DTM segment, add code 018, 2, 3, and 4, we don't have to do anything. Code 4, add GM. The SDQ, first data element, is each EA. This is 92. We don't have to do anything for 3 and 4. And that's it. So basically we're done and our SEF file is made. So let me save this. Okay, let's test this SEF file with their sample EDI file that they sent us, and we're going to use the eFile Manager to do that. So here's the 846 sample EDI file they sent us. So I'm going to open it up with the eFile Manager. I'm going to use the SEF file that we just created. Here's the 846 SEF file. I'll open it and hit OK. So when the EDI file gets loaded into the eFile Manager, it gets validated against the SEF file. And if there's any discrepancies, then we'll get errors like this. So let's check what these warnings are. If I double click on it, it points us to where the problem was found, and it says that 16 is not found in data element 374. So let's look at our SEF file. So this is the DTM segment after the BIA. So it's this one. And if we look at the code, 166 is the only allowed value for this data element. If we look at our eFile manager, they have 16, and that's the problem. It should be 166. But let's verify this with the actual guideline that they sent us, because we may have entered that wrong when we created the SEF file. So this is the DTM segment, and sure enough, it is 166, 166. So this means that their sample EDI file is wrong. So this shouldn't be 16, it should be 166. It's missing the value 6. And the next error here, that was the same. It didn't meet the minimum requirement, which was 3. So the minimum requirement here was 3. So just having 16 was wrong. So that's resolved. And the second error message is this. The group control number does not match the trailer control number. So this is the trailer control number 405100, and the group, this is the group control number is 95. And that's wrong. If this is 95, then the trailer segment should be 95 as well. So the sample EDI file is wrong. So I'm going to correct that. I'm going to save it. And if I load the EDI file again, let's see what happens. Good. Now there's no more error messages. The sample EDI file is correct. Our SEF file looks good. And I just have to tell the trading partner that their sample EDI file itself did not comply to their own guideline. And that's about it. So thank you for watching.